IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hi, I'm Sarthak and I welcome you to one more episode of All Things Policy. States provide for different kinds of goods and services. Usually they provide public goods, merit goods, and in some cases they might even provide private goods. Now, what is the experience of the Indian citizen with respect to these services? What are the factors that impact the quality of these services? What shapes the experience of the citizen with respect to these services? These are few things that we are going to talk about in this episode. To discuss this, I have with me my colleague Apurv. Apurv manages Takshila's flagship postgraduate program in public policy. Hi Apurv, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Arthur, for having me.
Yeah, so Apurv, since we are at it, would you like to add something?
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah, to all our listeners, the application process for the postgraduate program in public policy, which is a 48-week long program, is still live. And if you want to take a deep dive into public policy, policy analysis, and policy implementation, then this is a completely online program for all the working professionals. And the last day to submit your application form is 8th of January. The cohort begins from 15th of January. So if you want to have a great sort of a career in public policy, then this is a program that you should sign up for.
Thanks, Apurv. So do check our website and if you're interested, please apply for the program. So coming back, what we are supposed to discuss. So Apurv, as I just mentioned some time back, that say the states provide for different kinds of services, and citizens, right? They have to navigate through the complex state apparatus to acquire these welfare services. So how all these things shape up, or what are the factors which actually define how the citizens navigate through this entire apparatus?
Right. So the topic for today's discussion, Sarthak, is completely within the jurisdiction of distributive politics, right? So I just need some time to set the context, and then we can sort of, delve into claiming the state by citizens. That's the theme of our conversation. So political scientist Susan Stokes, in her seminal work, Brokers, Voters, and Clientelism, so she talks about two kinds of distributive politics. And when I say distributive politics, it means a politics in which the government distributes either cash, employment, material benefits, or other resources to the citizens. And India is a classic example of one version of distributive politics because it's a medium income country. We started 75 years ago. We started from a very low socioeconomic base. So I think distributive politics and its other version that is right now present in India was inevitable. So there are two kinds of distributive politics. One is programmatic politics, one is non-programmatic politics. In programmatic politics, there is a certain criteria under which you distribute some of the material benefits. In non-programmatic or distributive politics, there are no such criteria. And it's done quite strategically by political actors to get some political support or votes. And if there is an element of getting political support or votes by giving and distributing these material benefits, and that kind of distributive politics is called clientelistic politics, which is the kind of politics that we have in India. And in previous episodes on welfare architecture, we have spoken about this politics in quite detail, right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of a politics that we have, which means that citizens have to depend upon the state and upon the political actors and the apparatus, that the complex apparatus that you've just spoken about of the state, to get those services, to get those material benefits, right? Which means that they have to navigate through a very complex sort of an entity called the state. Right now we come to the concept of claiming the state, because not every time state is responsive, not every time the state has capacity to deliver public services that the citizens are asking. So what happens is that the onus goes to the citizen to demand for public services, to demand for goods and services, right? And how do they do that? They do that, in a democratic setup, they do that through a wide range of democratic activities, such as petitioning, such as filing applications, such as other kind of visiting government offices, waiting for their turn to come. So this kind of a day-to-day political action is called as claiming the state. or and many sort of political scientists have explained this concept. So this is what is claiming the state, and this is how this through this state claiming, a citizen navigates through the complex apparatus, complex process of government or public officials.
Yeah. So basically, if there is someone who has some form of a disability, but they're entitled to, let's say, some form of benefit, right? Maybe a pension scheme or something like that. So the entire process where they are filling up the form, they're waiting for the disbursement, or let's say there is someone who wants to access or does not have a water supply, maybe wants to have a water supply connection. So when they are going to the government offices for water supply, they're filling up the form, waiting for the to get the connection, or let's say they want to get some, there is some leakage or something, they want to get it fixed. All these things will fall under this category, right?
Absolutely. So, one of the finest books that I have read was Claiming the State by Gabby Crooks Weisner, and she defines claim making as a citizen action in pursuit of welfare goods and services, which are broadly understood as resources intended to protect and improve well-being, right? And she also argues that this act of claim making is as political as pressing that ballot button every 5 years, right? She gives an example of an old man waiting on the benches of a government office with his pension application is one such claim making act, and it is as political as that man electing his representative, right? But no matter how excruciatingly painful this claim making is, the poor in India has opted for this because all they have is the voice. In terms of Albert Hirschman's exit voice and loyalty, they have voice, they can raise the voice, unlike for the affluent citizens who have the option to exit, and they have exited in bulk over the past few decades to private services. So the poor in India, they have the voice, and that's why they stick to claim making.
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? Because some of the services that you would expect to get it from the government, but you don't get it, and since you are affluent, you can afford it, you get it from the private players. Now, another dimension that is that we need to look at it is how is the service delivery dependent on claim making, and again, how claim making is dependent on a community's capacity,
Hmm.
right? As you mentioned that maybe those who are affluent, they are moving out, right? So they don't need to be dependent on the state, and they are moving out. So there will be different communities who will again have different level of dependence, and claim making will be dependent on the community's capacity, and service delivery is not uniform, it also varies. So service delivery is dependent on claim making. So how all these things are linked with one another?
So Gabby Crooks Weisner, she gives a very good framework to understand all these conditions, Sarthak, and the factors under which claim making succeeds. To have an effective claim making, she argues that there should be four conditions. One is a motivating condition. So motivating condition means that the citizen should be motivated, or there should be a sense of grievance within the citizen that a particular service or good has or set of goods have not been delivered. So for example, water pump, right? Community water pump, or toilets, or all weather roads in rural areas. So there has to be a grievance and inconvenience that will lead to motivating conditions. So this will motivate them to claim the goods and services that was intended to be delivered. Then there are enabling conditions. The enabling conditions are supporting conditions. So it's not only motivation that's going to help you get the services. There has to be enabling condition, which means that you should have proper information about government performance, about government services, about the effectiveness of government officials or public officials. You should have a procedural and a tacit knowledge of how things work within a government department, whether you have to file a petition, you have to file an application, what kinds of documents are required, who are the non-public official or sort of middlemen through which you can access, because there's a whole bunch of middlemen also who have a very dominant role in this whole process. So you should have a procedural and tacit information knowledge about that process also. And also, as I said, there's a lot of middlemen and public officials, so you should have a proper sort of sense of how you link to how you should have linkages to the state or public officials. So you have motivating conditions and you have enabling conditions. Motivating conditions lead to aspirations, and these aspirations lead to citizen action that further leads to claim making. Enabling condition increases the capabilities of the citizen to take that public action.
Yeah, so Apoorv, when you're talking about aspirations, right? So again, within aspirations, there are multiple things, right? First of all, there should be some form of a need among the citizens, and they should also feel entitled that they deserve these kind of services. Now, there is also another factor, that is the sense of efficacy. That implies that whatever they are, I mean, the state should be capable to provide for these kind of services. Now, this was something which I found interesting, because if the citizens think that the state might not be able to provide for some of the services, or maybe the citizens have demanded something and they have not got it, so in future again, the demands from the citizens from the state might not be there, or I mean, the demands might go down.
That's right, Sarthak. So when I say, yeah, so sense of efficacy is one of the motivating conditions, right? That leads to aspiration. So sense of efficacy is both on the citizens end and at the state's end. So if a citizen knows that his or her voice is going to make an impact, then that increases his or her sense of efficacy, and then the chances are high that the citizen will take action of claim making, right? If the sense of efficacy is down, the chances are high that the citizen won't take action, because he knows that he's so sort of powerless, and he's so marginalized that no matter how much he will sort of make you and cry, his voice won't be heard, right? So sense of efficacy on the citizen end. Then the citizen should also have sense of efficacy on the state's end, because if the state is non-responsive, or they don't have capacity to deliver on the public services, then again that aspiration get dampened, right? And again that the probability of that citizen action goes down. So I think, yeah, you are spot on when you say that sense of efficacy is actually one of the most important factors within motivating conditions.
Yeah. So, Apoorv, there was this recent study on Mumbai's water supply. And so we'll link the study with this podcast. So, what they find out is whenever there is a demand for increasing the services, that means maybe in a particular area, the quantum of water that is being supplied is low, and citizens are demanding for higher water supply, more volume of water supply. Usually what happens is the state is not responding, the whoever is the state official, or whatever is the state agency, they are not responding. So as a result of which, what happens is in future, the number of demands made reduces. But whenever there is a demand for, let's say, plugging a leakage somewhere, right? So these demands are usually met. So whenever these demands are met, you will also find that more number of claims also come up, more number of demands come up. So again, I think the sense of efficacy bit is connected here, right? So we have empirical evidence to prove this.
Right, 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 right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And when you talk about capabilities, right, you mentioned that it is basically how citizens are aware about the way governments are functioning, what
Yes.
kind of information they have. Now, I would assume that in the present context, right, at least in the last couple of decades, citizens' ability to access information from the state would have increased. The different kind of channels and whatever you need to access information would have improved. And also, I mean, many of the government departments nowadays, they will be online, they will be having presence online and across platforms. But still, there might be chances that some government departments might not be there, or some channels might be still restricted. So in that case, what happens?
Okay, yeah, yeah, you're right, Sarthak. So of late, there are several channels that have enabled citizens to get access to information. So, for example, right to information. I think that's one of the best tools that India has got to access government information, and how the state works, how the public officials work, and make public officials and Indian state accountable. But not, I mean, of late, RTI has also been ineffective, because a lot of pendency, the information commissioners are not being hired, that cadre is missing in some states, and there are several other challenges. So what happens is that the citizens depend on other channels to gain access to state, to gain access to information, and unfortunately they have to depend on middlemen, and then there is a high chances of rent seeking or even misinformation, I would say, because if rent seeking is a dominant factor, then that becomes an important factor. So for example, as a citizen, if you don't know how you will get your Aadhaar card or a voter's ID, and you don't have information as to what kind of documents are required, what kind of form is required, which office you need to go, then you need to depend on a middleman, and the middleman will charge you money for his or her service, right?
Yeah.
So you may get information, you may get service in some form, but you are paying for the service which is actually free of cost. right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this
yeah.
is also happening a lot, and a lot of study, a big body of literature has come up on these middlemen and these kind of processes.
So, Apur, I mean, apart from aspirations and the capabilities, right, there are some other factors as well. So, we're going to talk about that. But before we go to that, let's have a small break.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IBM Podcast Network. On the Filter Coffee podcast, Karthik speaks with Shreya Sundaresan, co-founder of data-led climate organization Transition Zero. They discuss using data science and financial modeling to fight climate change. It's tough to be a comedian or satirist in India today, but Akash Banerjee is thriving. Check out this year-ender episode of The Wire Talks where he joins Siddharth to sum up 2021. This week on Probation Se Promotion Tak, Abhinav talks about some basic tips to negotiate a good salary. On The Longest Constitution, Priya takes us through the issue of entitlement and reservations at the workplace, especially when it comes to caste hierarchies and sexual harassment. On the Habit Coach podcast, Ashton is joined by Sonali Sabharwal. She's a macrobiotic nutritionist and they discuss how Vipassana meditation can help us get over stress and deal with other mental health issues. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, do tell a friend. The word of mouth absolutely is essential to us. Don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms that you've been listening to. And also, I'd like to ask everybody to check us out on YouTube. We have a number of channels going. You can find all of them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, CoinSwitch Kuber, and Intel. Thank you so much for making this possible.
So, coming back, so Apur, we are going to talk about some other factors for effective claim making.
Yes, Arthur. So the other two factors, and these are extremely important factors for effective claim making, are social and spatial exposure of a citizen and also the institutional terrain of the state. And let me explain them one by one. So social and spatial exposure basically means that how exposed a citizen is to other tools of claim making, right? So if the society or if the community is parochial, is restrictive, and that sort of restricts the mobility of the citizen, which means that the exposure of that particular individual or that citizen is less, right? And since the exposure is less, then the ideas to sort of have that citizen action or claim making action is also restricted. But I mean, and this has happened in the past 2 decades, with the sort of rural economy undergoing a big churn and non-farm incomes increasing, the mobility has increased, the migration has increased, and people are more involved in non-farm incomes, which means that they are migrating to sort of non-rural areas. And when that's happening, and during all this churn, what's also happening is that they are also breaking their boundaries, their rigid boundaries of caste or sort of other boundaries, and they are getting exposed to other kinds of ideas in these new geographies. And these are porous, I mean, this is a sort of term that Gabby Cruz Weisner has used. These boundaries are quite porous because in an urban space, no matter what your caste is, you are an anonymous person, and you are exposed to a broad range of ideas, and other activities and other sort of frameworks to make an effective claim, right, on the state. So your aspirations become expansive, and your citizen action or claim making instance also becomes high and diverse, which means that the probability of you making claim when you come back to your rural sort of ecosystem is really high, right, as compared to people who are stuck in that narrow and constrained ecosystems with limited capabilities and limited aspirations. So that's one of the factors of social and spatial exposure. The other extremely important, the last factor, is institutional terrain of the state. And in India, of late, we have seen that the state is there in every sort of walks of our life. No matter how much we say that the state would become a nanny state, it hasn't become a nanny state, right? And it's there, and in every form of service delivery, if you see, you will find the Indian state there. But what Indian state is also doing is that it is not effective and it is uneven. So you have a state that is broad, but it is uneven, right? So you have a primary health center in rural boondocks of India, but they are their performance is uneven, and their delivery is uneven, right? So there is an institutional terrain which is broad but uneven. Now when this happens, when you have a broad institutional terrain when you have a broad presence of state but uneven presence of state, it is then the claim making is high and quite diverse, right? For example, I mean, the opposite to this could be, countries where you have a uniform state and it's broad. So you have state that is there across all walks of life, across all forms of service delivery, but is also uniform, it is also consistent, it is also sort of regular, and accessibility as is high, right? So for example, Scandinavian countries, right, their claim making will be low because the citizens have no incentive to ask for the government officials to deliver, because they're already delivering, right? So when it's broad and it's uneven like India, it is then the claim making is extremely high.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I wanted to add one more dimension here. So again, I was reading a recent paper, the link of which I'll share here. So there they find out that the type of claims that citizens make, it also might type of claims they make, and again how things pan out. Right? It also depends. It also can impact the future of claim making, and also the kind of claims they make depends on where they are coming from, which part of the society they are of. And both these things leads to two kind of equilibrium. In the first equilibrium, where already the services are fine, right? There, I mean, the service delivery is good. Already there are high levels of they're at a high level of service delivery. So in this case, what will happen is the citizens will not be asking for higher services. They will rather be asking for some form of a maintenance of whatever they're already getting. And maintenance related claims are usually easy to address, right? When let's say there is a water leakage somewhere, or where if there is a pothole on the road, right? It is comparatively easy to address this. And when the officials are dealing with these kind of things, right? So it is not leading to a situation where you have to take out resources or you have to reallocate resources from one place to another. Here, just you are trying to fix the potholes or you're just plugging the leakages. And also you might get different kind of data. The officials might get different kind of data which can help in improving other complaints. So usually these kind of whenever these kind of complaints are there, or whenever these kind of claims are there, generally the response rate is good. And when the response rate is good, that sense of efficacy thing, which is an aspirations part, that motivating factor which comes in, and citizens will make more claims. So what is happening here is already you have better services. The officials are responding to whatever claims you are making. They are mostly maintenance related claims, and your issues are getting resolved. And again, further claim making is there, which can lead to even better service delivery. On the other hand, there can be another kind of situation where you don't have the basic services. So in this scenario, what will happen is the citizens will demand for the basic services. They will basically say that, okay, at this place we are not having sufficient water. Please increase the delivery of water here, right? Whatever volume you are getting, we should get more water. Now, this is something which is requiring reallocation of resources. Either the officials might be unwilling to do that, or they might have the inability to do it, because again the state capacity and all those things kicks in. And as a result of which, what will happen, they will not do it. And if they're not doing it, again, the citizens over a period of time, they will they will be demotivated. They will not make further claims, right? So this is something which can discourage future claim making. So two equilibriums are happening: one where already the service quality is better and their claim making increases, and another equilibrium, the service quality is not good, and again there is no claim making. So it can lead to increase in inequality somewhere.
Right, Satak. And I think it's what you have just explained. It's quite similar to the broad and uneven terrain concept that I spoke. So effective claim making happens in state, as I said, that whose terrain is broad and uneven. In India, the state is present everywhere, but is flailing, right? And there are social programs delivering some of the public services, but the state's performance is uneven or even dismal in some cases. There are progressive legislations that ensure that public provision happens broadly, but the frontline institutions of the state fail to deliver them. So our primary health centers, our education, our sort of schools in primary schools in rural sort of areas, they fail to deliver them because of obvious reason. So this is what provoke grievance within the citizen and a sense of entitlement that we spoke about at the beginning of our conversation. And when they have a grievance, when they have a sense of entitlement, and they also have social and spatial exposure due to increasing mobility, then that leads to catalytic effect, and this is when the effective claim making happens, right? So I mean, this is the sort of, I would say, the crux of our entire sort of concept and this idea.
Yeah. So thanks, Apurv. Thanks to the listeners for joining in. We'll meet again in one more episode of All Things Policy.
Thank you, Sarthak.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
Remember the days when our granny used to narrate once upon a time stories? Let's bring back the good old days of moral stories with Storytime Tamil. Hi, I am Ravishankar Balachandran, host of Storytime Tamil podcast. I would like you to entertain and educate your children with stories from Storytime Tamil. Tune in to the new episode sharp at 7 p.m. every day on IVM website, IVM podcast app, YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Don't you think that if everyone around you is getting smart, you better be smarter? Hey there, I'm the traveling professor Siddharth Deshmukh, and I'm back with season 2 of my podcast to make you smarter. Smarter with Sid. What's this season's focus about? Well, it's about 10-minute nuggets that will make you stand out at work. It's time to go from smart to smarter. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday and become smarter with Sid.